Everybody, my name is Paul, and I have a lot of interesting content on this website. And today is one of my feature stories about different parables and examples and metaphors that I've heard over the years. Some of them are kind of humorous, and all of them have a little point to them. And today I'll share a little more about them, and hope you enjoyed them. So let's get started. There was a young man one time, long ago in India, and he used to travel from village to village, back and forth, to do various chores for his family. And along the way, he would often encounter a young guru, an elderly guru, I should say, and sitting there giving discourse. And he would sometimes pause and listen for a while. And after some time, he became a regular there. And he would sit there, and he always heard from his guru, always have faith in God, always have faith in God. So one day, this young man thought, well, this guru has been very helpful to me, and I'm going to offer him, what can I do for you, sir? And the guru looked at him and said, young man, that's a very nice request. I'm actually quite thirsty. Will you go to the well down the road in a nearby town and get me some pitcher of water? So the young man went off on his journey, very pleased that he was going to do something for his guru and his teacher. So he got to the well, and he was thinking about it, and there was a young lady there. And they got talking, and she started to help him. She told the story about how to open the well, how to get the bucket down there and get the well in the pitcher and so on. And they got talking, and they just forgot about everything. They just having a lovely conversation. And the young lady says to her, hey, why don't you come and meet my parents? So they live nearby, and we'll go and have a chat with them because you're such a nice person, and I'd like you to introduce you to them. So they went off to the parents' house, and the parents indeed found the young man, a delightful young man, and said he was a student of a guru and had a good character, and he was kept saying, I always have faith in God. So there was a great familiarity, and people had a lot of joy, and they recognized that, hey, maybe this is our karma, and this is what made for the perfect thing that happened, and my daughter can now get married. So sure enough, the young man, they had a short courtship, and then they got married according to the customs of the town. And little by little, the man just grew, had a couple of kids, and started a little homestead there near the river. And all was going very, very well. And he always was saying, I just have always faith in God, have faith in God. But one day, a big flood came to his town, and he was like getting washed away, towns getting washed away, and the ridge got washed away, and finally he was holding two kids, one on each shoulder, and they got washed away, and he was like crying out to God, God, where are you? I've always had faith in you. Where are you? And then he heard this voice, where's my glass of water? So we have our responsibilities in spite of our faith in God. So there's another story that is a little bit more humorous, and apparently there's this one agnostic man, and he was not a bad man at all, and he lived a kind of life, but he never really believed in God or heaven or hell or anything like that. So he finally died, and he found himself in a interesting place, and there was some nice being there and a couple angels there, and they said, well, sir, you've arrived here. Apparently you've delivered a good life, and you're welcome to come into heaven. And the man started thinking, well, I don't know, this just seems a little strange because I didn't even know there was a heaven, and I haven't been a really devotional person in my life. And, can you give me a chance to see the other place and see how that is? Because then, if I have a comparison, then I'll know how to choose. So the angels looked at each other and said, well, this is a little odd, but, this is his request, so let's send him off there. So he was taken off to a place and found himself in a huge lobby, and there was a lot of people there. Some of them were dancing, and then he looked out, and there was a pool out there, and he picked up some brochures and walked around and said, it's not so bad. It's kind of like my Earth here. There seems to be a lot to do here and a lot of fun, and people seem to be having a good time. So he said, okay, well, I'm ready to go back and make my decision. So they went back up to the angels at the pearly gates, and they said, well, sir, I kind of like that old life that I had like on Earth, and it seems it's not so bad as people told me, so I think I'll just go to the other place, because I don't know what's over here, so I'll just go there. So they said, well, that's a little odd. So he said, okay, we'll take him back there. So he got back to the place, and there wasn't a lobby there, and there was filthy rooms and all rats everywhere, and nobody was having a good time, and there was just terrible conditions and smoke everywhere, and it's horrible. So he says, he saw someone there. He says, "Hey, what's going on here? They told me, what about the brochures? What about the beaches? What about the nice rooms? What about the pool?" The guy there says, "Well, that's our marketing department." So, see if I can remember another one here. Maybe this is a little bit of a joke here. So this man, he dies. Another one about going to heaven and so on. This guy dies and hasn't really been a great man in his life or human being. And he gets there and they try to ask him, "Well, what have you done good in your life? And tell me about it, and we'll see if you can let me in. Let you in." So he thinks for a while. I go, "Man, I don't see. There was that beggar one day, and yeah, I gave him $1. Yeah, that was one good thing I did." So the angel said, "Well, is there anything else?" I have to think about that a little bit, and thought and thought and thought. He says, "Yeah, there was that time, I was at the Salvation Army, and they were ringing their bell, and I gave them $1, and yeah, that's what I did. That's my kindness." So the angels started thinking, well, this is a little odd because, he has done some good, and he hasn't been a terrible person, but, he's really not the greatest person here, and not sure if we want to have him here. So they went back to God and said, "God, we got this guy down here, and, he's done a little bit of good. He told us he gave a couple of dollars to a couple of charities in his life, and he's wondering if he should come in." So God says, "Well, just give him his $2 back and tell him to go to hell." So, see if I can think of another one here. I'll tell you one about the King Janaka. This is see if I can do this right here. It's a fable story. I am not familiar with all the details. The king, I believe, was Janaka. Anyway, there was this king, and one day he had this dream, terrifying dream. And in this dream, he had they were in a pool of mud, and there were bulls fighting, and he had one little bowl of rice, and he was trying to cook it, and he finally was able to make a little tiny fire, and just as he was making a fire to cook his rice, he was about to starve. The bulls knocked over his bowl of rice, and that was it, and he couldn't have any food at all, and he was destitute, and then he woke up. And now this man was a king, and he was very confused about this dream because it felt so very real. Well, he determined that I'm going to find out what is real, because this dream is real, and I feel like a dream is real, but here I am in my palace and not real. So he put out a message to all the kingdom, "Please come and, tell me if my dream is real or not, and explain the situation." So he made two stages, two seats on a platform, and one was lower and one was higher. And he says, if you sit in the lower chair and you give me the answer and satisfy my question, then I will give you half the kingdom. But if you sit in the top one and you tell me the wrong answer, then you'll be killed. So most of the people didn't even bother to get up on a higher platform. When they got up on a second one, the lower one, they started spieling about this and that, about the king's dream and psychology, this and that. And it really didn't satisfy the king, and so he let them off. He didn't, kill them, but, no kingdom. So finally this young man comes in, and he was kind of deformed, young man, and they have, people scowl at people like that. And he gets up there, and he gets right on the top chair. And the king was very impressed. "Who do you think you are? Don't you know that if you give me the wrong answer, I'm going to kill you? But if you give me the right answer, you can inherit my kingdom and be my personal guide." So the king, this young man, first of all, he was being insulted by the population there, the people in there in the room. because he had deformity on his skin. And he says, well, king, why do you have these people who are just cobblers? They're just shoemakers. Who are they? They only see his skin. So he started insulting these people right away. The king started to realize, well, this guy, he's got a little spunk here. I got to listen to what he's going to say. So then he said, king, he interrogated the king. He says, who had this kingdom before you? And then he said, well, my dad had this, and before him, my grandfather had it. And is that real? Is that your kingdom? Were you there? And no. Well, who will have this kingdom after you? He said, well, they're my heirs. And is that real? It's just a moment you're having this dream. So which is the dream? Because neither this is a dream, and the other is also a dream. And if you want, I'll show you what the real is so you can know both are dreams. The king started thinking about it. It's like, well, okay, sir. And so the young man taught him practical experience, meditation, and realized that, yes, there is a divine self, but it's neither the dream, and this physical world is like a dream. So all is like a dream in some sense, and then you can have a practical realization. So the end of the story was that the king invited the young man to be his teacher and personal guru. So a little parable about that, judging from the outside what someone is and knowing what reality is, because it's an inner experience, and the duality has no reality in a real sense of the word. So let's see if I can think of another one here. So I decided to add a couple more to the last series here. And this one is kind of interesting, and again involves another king. So this king had a big kingdom, and everywhere he went he had these little sandals on. And he would often stub his toe, and things would go through the sole of his foot and hurt him and so on. So he suddenly had this idea, a crazy idea, that I want to carpet my whole kingdom so that wherever I walk it's always soft. Kind of a silly story, but has a parable behind it. So he went out and he announced a decree to all his kingdoms, please show me how I can walk everywhere in my kingdom and still have it feel carpeted. I want to find a solution here. So people came after various harebrained schemes, and they're going to put carpeting on the sidewalks and carpeting on the roads and make everything soft and everything like that. So the king was never satisfied by any of the explanations, and then it involved a lot of expense. So finally one man came up and he said, look, sir, he whispered in the ear, and he said, sir, I know exactly how we can make that happen for you. So the king says, oh my goodness, if you can help me that way, I'll let you live in my palace for the rest of your life, and treated like a king, a prince. So what he told the prince, the king, he said, okay, I'll be back in a couple of days. So he went out and he went to a local shoemaker and he said, make me some slippers and some shoes lined with carpet, with velvet and carpet, and I'll take them back to the king. So he took them back to the king and says, sir, I have present you these shoes, and inside they're velvet lined and soft, and wherever you walk in your kingdom, you'll have this beautiful feeling on your feet. So the king was very pleased with that, solved the problem, and from that day on, the man lived in the palace of the king. So this is a funny story here. I'll tell you this because it just came to my mind. In India, there's a lot of different pastries and sweets that people can buy, and they're made with flour and so on, and nuts and so on, and they are often in the shape of a ball. And there's one particular one called the laddu. A lot of people who listen to this might know what a laddu is. Just go look it up. They're kind of like a tannish color and bumpy, and they taste delicious, by the way. So one day this man said to his wife, honey, I'm going off to this spiritual festival in this particular town because there's a big, huge festival there, and I need to go and get some inspiration. So the woman says, honey, that's wonderful. Be on your way and enjoy your visit and your inspiration. But please, on your way back, that town that makes the best laddus in anywhere in our area. And please bring back some of those beautiful, sweet-tasting laddus. So Man went to the festival and had a great time, got so inspired and intoxicated, and he's starting to walk home on a journey with all the other pilgrims, and he started, oh, I forgot to get those ladus. Well, he was about halfway home. He didn't want to go all the way back and have to explain to his wife, well, you know, it took me so long, and why were you gone, and all that. And so he found a little box, and he noticed that there was some camel dung on the ground, you know, little round balls, kind of looked like a laddu. So he said, well, I don't know what to do, but I got to do this. So he put a dozen of them in a nice little box and covered it up and say, came home to his wife, and his wife was all happy to see him again, all back on time and everything. He says, oh, honey, by the way, did you get those laddus? Well, the man was like afraid that she was going to ask, and finally he said, well, okay, here it is, and he put it on the table. So she starts eating them like, mmm. So after a while, the man says, look, honey, how do they taste? And she says, you know, they kind of taste like camel dung, but they're from that famous town, so I'm just enjoying them. So I hope you enjoyed these stories, and I'll tag this couple stories I just said to the last one, and please like and share if you find these interesting or entertaining. So again, I hope to see you in some of my other videos, and I'll make more of these stories and dreams. Okay, I'll add one more story to this little sequence here. And this story is about the young maiden in the tower. It has a lot of symbolism behind it, but I'll tell you a little story here, an inspiration and parable. A young woman got trapped in by a bad suitor and put in along a tall tower. And she was actually in love with a young man from her neighborhood, and this young man used to come and call her from the bottom of the tower and say, I'd love to come up there, and I don't know how to rescue you. Can you throw me down a rope? So I have no rope, and there's no way for me to get you to, so, you know, I don't know what to do. Well, the young man thought about this for a long time, and he was very, very upset because his wife, his future wife, was up on this tower being kidnapped by this terrible man. So he went to a town guru and started asking questions. Said, look, sir, you know, I got to find a way to reach my my future wife, my bride, my lover, and rescue her from this tower. But he explained to the guru, this is my situation. I can't throw a rope up. It's too heavy, and it's too tall, and I don't know what else to do. I don't have a ladder. So the guru thought for a minute and said, okay, I'll tell you what you got to do. Find a tiny little beetle and put on its back a little sap from the pine tree. And in that sap, attach a piece of thread. Go get a lot of thread from a tailor, and attach a tiny thread to that bug. So then when that bug climbs up the hill, up the tower, it will be pulling that tiny thread all the way up, and then when it gets to the end of that thread, you tie just a little bit thicker string on there. And then the bug will keep going on, and then eventually it'll get to the top, and then the young maiden will be able to pull the thread and pull the little string, and attach the bigger string will be a rope, and then you can get her down. So they thought it was very, very clever. So that's what he did. He went and found a little beetle, and he attached some wax or some material from a sap of a pine tree on the back, and then he found some thread, and the beetle started climbing up and up and up, and when it got a little higher and it could take a little more, he added a little bit of thicker string, and when the beetle went higher up, and finally it got up to the top where the woman would pull the thread, the little tiny thread, and then pull up the bigger string, and then finally she was able to pull up the rope. Now the moral of the story here is about the thread of consciousness within, that we get shown a tiny little sliver, a tiny little thread connection to our inner being, and in that you follow that, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, so that the connection between you and your divine and your beloved is as strong as that rope. That's the whole metaphor of this particular little parable here. So I hope you enjoyed the stories, and please like and share. I love the comments, and if there's any other place that I could hear nice stories and inspirations and dreams, I'd love to hear from everybody. So thanks again. Bye bye.